He walked into the station smiling, like a man who'd memorized the shape of fear, and finally decided to fold it into his pocket. Rowan Pike was 52, all knuckles and stubborn eyes, the kind of white working-class mechanic who kept a town's engines humming while the town pretended not to know his name. For 7 years, Rust County had hunted him like a ghost story parents tell to make kids come home before dark. The fire at the old Calyx fertilizer plant had eaten 3 lives and half a skyline, and the sheriff, Dalton Crowley, a man with a billboard smile and a Bible under his elbow, stood on the courthouse steps and promised to bring the arsonist to heel. Crowley won re-election in a landslide. Rowan's picture went up in every post office and pawn shop. Tips were rewarded. Doors were kicked. Faith was televised. But the fire hadn't started with Rowan. It started with a shut-off alarm, a falsified inspection, and a county too quiet about the money that changed hands to keep a bad conveyor belt running. Everybody in town learned to say the sheriff's name softly, like a prayer or a threat. Now Rowan pushed through the glass doors of the station with a lunchbox in his left hand and that strange smile on his face. The deputy at the desk reached for his radio. "Don't bother," Rowan said, setting the lunchbox on the counter. "I walked in." "I'm not walking out." They shackled him with more ceremony than necessary. Crowley himself came down from his office like a king of humor in a peasant. He still had the TV-friendly grin, but there was something tired in it too. The way a wolf looks when it's eaten the herd and still can't fill the hole. "Well now," Crowley drawled, pacing the interrogation room. "I prayed for this day, son." Rowan studied the camera in the corner. "You always do your praying on tape?" Crowley leaned in. "Confess, and I'll see you live to old age." 7 years you chased me," Rowan said, voice even. 7 years you spent more money hunting me than this county spent fixing the pipeline under the school. Funny math. Crowley's smile didn't move. "Confession." Rowan nodded at the lunchbox on the table. "There's my confession." Crowley snapped the latch. Inside lay a faded photograph of the plant's control room, a spiral notebook, and a cheap flash drive taped to a wrench. Crowley raised a brow, playing bored, but his eyes flickered. "You're going to want internal affairs for that," Rowan said. "Maybe the Attorney General. Maybe a priest." They left him alone for a while, long enough to let doubt creep into the walls. But Rowan didn't pace, didn't pray. He breathed, slow and patient, remembering nights sleeping in semi-cabins and barns, washing up in gas station sinks, learning to read case law under a headlamp because a man on the run either learns or goes under. He remembered the voices that had kept him moving. His mother's hushed, "Keep your chin up, baby." His daughter June's voicemail from 3 Christmases ago, "Daddy, if you hear this, I forgive you." And the voice of the plant foreman, Benny Holt, 2 beers deep in a truck cab the night before the fire, saying, "The sheriff says it's fine. He doesn't care if the alarms are sticky. Just get me through inspection." Rowan had asked a question that stuck like a nail in his ribs. How much truth can a town ignore if it's printed on money? The door opened. 2 suits, city starch, and distant eyes came in behind Crowley. The taller one introduced himself as Special Agent Klein. IA, not FBI. County machines don't like federal ones. "You brought us homework," Klein said, setting the notebook on the table and sliding on gloves. Rowan nodded. Ledger from Benny Holt's garage. He liked paper, said it made him feel real. It's every cash drop from Calyx to the campaign fund that lives under the sheriff's mama's butcher paper. Addresses, dates. 6 months before the fire, 6 months after. Crowley snorted. A garage monkey's scribbles. Plus this. Rowan gestured to the flash drive. Body cam footage. Not from a cop. From me. I did some work as a janitor for the courthouse a few nights. Funny what turns up in the burn bag when the shredder overheats. Klein slid the flash drive into a laptop. The room filled with the low hum of fluorescent regret. On screen, in grainy gray, a young deputy lifted a bag from evidence, swapped labels with another. The angle shifted. Crowley's voice, unmistakable, said, "We ain't losing this county over one grease monkey. You hear?" Crowley wasn't smiling now. Klein's face didn't change, but the air did. It got crisp, like the first fall morning, when you know summer's just a memory that made you sweat too long. He closed the laptop. "We'll need to verify the chain of custody," Klein said. Rowan shrugged. "I figured. That's why I mailed copies to 3 people yesterday. Certified, return receipt. One of them a reporter who didn't like what you did with her brother's DUI, Sheriff. If I disappear, the copies don't." Crowley's hand hovered near his belt. Not his gun, his phone. He was a man used to fixing problems with a single call, but the room had changed shape on him. The hunter had walked into the trap, carrying the trap. "Why'd you come back?" Klein asked. Rowan met his gaze. "Because if I ran forever, Rust County would never stop being what you made it. Loud on punishment, quiet on truth. And because my little girl's getting married in 2 months. If I'm going to stand at the back of that church, I want my name cleansed, not just my face hidden." Klein nodded slowly. He turned to Crowley. "Sheriff, per policy, we're initiating a temporary suspension pending investigation. You need to surrender your phone and service weapon." Crowley laughed once, like a stuck hinge. "You are out of your jurisdiction, city boy." Klein didn't raise his voice. "So is evidence tampering." In the hall, radios crackled with a different tone, thin with curiosity instead of certainty. Deputies who'd written Rowan off as a cautionary tale now leaned into windows to look at him like a man raising a quiet hand at his own hanging. They moved Rowan to a holding cell. The bars were clean, the benches cold. He sat with his back straight, that smile tucked away now, replaced by something steadier. He thought of the Calyx Memorial, just 3 names embossed into a tired brick wall, and of Benny Holt, who died of natural causes 6 months after the fire, and of the way Crowley always managed to get photographed handing turkeys to poor families at Thanksgiving, like the county's sins were a freezer you could fill with forgiveness. A deputy came and stood at the bars, young, freckled, scared where he didn't want to be seen. "You really do it?" he asked. "Burn the plant?" Rowan looked up, tired to the marrow. "I welded there for 8 years. My brother died in that fire. You think I'd light him like a candle?" The kid shifted. "They told us." "I know what they told you," Rowan said gently. "They told me, too. That's how it works. The story gets louder until nobody asks who's speaking. Hours later, Time measured in coffee refills and footsteps. Klein returned. He didn't sit. He stayed standing, like a man keeping his balance while the ground moved. "We verified enough to hold the sheriff's phone," he said. "We also pulled the plant inspection files from the year before the fire. There are signatures missing, pages torn. Somebody built a bridge with rotten boards." Rowan closed his eyes. The first breath of real relief in 7 years loosened inside him. Klein cleared his throat. "We're recommending conditional release by morning, pending formal charges. Not against you, against others." Rowan opened his eyes. "I'll take a conditional. I've lived with worse." Klein nodded once and turned to go, then paused. That lunchbox. Why bring it? Why not a lawyer? Rowan's smile returned, smaller now, a scar of joy. Men like Crowley know how to swallow lawyers. Lunchboxes, those belong to people like me. Folks stop believing what's in them until you open the lid. When morning creased the horizon pink, the station's TV flashed with footage no one expected to see. Dalton Crowley in handcuffs, jaw hard, eyes feral. The same hallway he'd strutted down for 15 years, now a chute. Deputies pretended not to watch. The county woke up differently. They released Rowan to the front steps, where the sun held his shoulders like an old friend. Reporters gathered, microphones blooming like metal flowers. "Mr. Pike," one called, 7 years running. "What do you want now?" Rowan's answer was simple. "My name, and a fair county for my daughter to raise kids in." A hush fell. If stories have weight, this one has finally shifted to the right side of the scale. He turned to leave, to find a payphone and call June, to tell her he might actually wear a suit to her wedding, might finally walk down an aisle without a shadow clinging to his boots. He had taken 3 steps when an unmarked car eased to the curb. The back window rolled down, just enough for a voice, smooth as fresh asphalt, to slide out. "Mr. Pike," it said, "Calix wasn't the fire. It was the smokescreen. If you want your daughter safe on her wedding day, you'll get in the car and stop smiling." The window slid up. The car didn't move. Rowan stood there, sunlight burning questions onto his skin. He looked back at the station where the man who'd hunted him was learning the shape of a cell. He looked forward to the quiet car and the future that had finally called his name only to whisper a threat through a cracked window. He exhaled and stepped toward the curb. Rowan Pike didn't move at first. The sunlight seemed too clean, too open, to share space with the shadow curling out of that half-rolled window. He could still hear the reporter's last question in his head, about justice, about a fair county. He could still taste his own answer, plain as bread. My name, my daughter's future. And then came the voice, smooth, practiced, belonging to someone who had never run a day in their life. Calix wasn't the fire. It was the smokescreen. The words itched under his skin. The car idled at the curb, engine low, black paint catching the morning. Rowan's jaw worked. He had thought the fight was over, that Dalton Crowley was the monster, the hunter, the last wall to knock down. But monsters rarely hunted alone. He stepped toward the curb. The back window slid lower. Inside, a face emerged. Silver hair, clean suit, eyes sharp as wire. Rowan knew him from the county fair speeches, the ribbon cuttings, the smiling handshakes in campaign ads. Senator Alton Briggs. Briggs had been the man Calyx executives toasted with whiskey when the plant expanded, the man Crowley bragged about golfing with, the man Rowan's mother used to say had a God smile and a devil's handshake. "Get in, Mr. Pike," Briggs said, calm as a dinner invite. "You've stirred a hornet's nest, and hornets don't forgive." Rowan's fists clenched, but he opened the car door, because if he didn't, someone else, someone he loved, might pay the price. The air smelled of leather and power. Briggs didn't look at Rowan at first. He simply adjusted his cufflinks and said, "You think Crowley was your enemy?" "Son, Crowley was a pawn. We needed a villain the county could recognize, a face to feed the anger. But the fire, that was logistics, insurance, relocation of assets. The county got paid, Calyx got richer, and Crowley got re-elected. Everyone was happy." Rowan's voice was gravel. "Except the 3 men who died." Briggs gave him a long, almost pitying look. "Collateral. You think industries grow without fertilizer, without steel, without blood?" Rowan's stomach turned, but he kept his eyes locked forward. "So why me? Why 7 years of being hunted like a dog?" "Because," Briggs said, lowering his voice, "you were convenient. No family close by, a temper record in the mill, and you asked too many questions about alarms that didn't work. You were born to be framed, Rowan Pike." The car rolled past the courthouse, past the station that still buzzed with Crowley's downfall, past neighbors who watched with folded arms, unaware that their new sheriff's scandal was only one brick in a wall that went higher than any of them could see. "Your evidence won't hold," Briggs continued. "Crowley will fall, yes. But you'll be painted as a liar, a desperate man trading stories to stay free. Unless you work with us." Rowan turned, eyes narrowed. "Work with you?" Briggs smiled, finally showing teeth. "You have credibility now. You turned yourself in. The town sees you as a fighter. We can use that. You speak, but only what we approve. You testify, but only against Crowley. In return, your daughter's wedding is untouched. Your future, quiet." "And if I don't?" Rowan asked, though he already knew. Briggs leaned closer, his whisper like oil on water. "Then the hornets sting where it hurts most. You'll bury more than memories, Mr. Pike." The car slowed, pulling onto a quiet road by the river. The sun glared off the water, blinding Rowan for a second. He heard the locks click. Briggs opened a folder from the seat beside him. Inside photos. His daughter June walked out of her job. June with her fiancé at a diner. June unlocked her front door. Rowan's breath caught in his throat. "You've got one chance," Briggs said smoothly. "Shake my hand, and the hive stays asleep. Refuse, and Rust County becomes a funeral procession." Rowan stared at the photos. His pulse hammered. The man who had run for 7 years suddenly realized freedom wasn't the same as safety. He had fought to clear his name, but what about hers? He thought of June as a little girl, falling asleep on his chest after he worked double shifts, her small fingers gripping his shirt like she could hold the world steady. He thought of her voicemail. "Daddy, if you hear this, I forgive you." He thought of the 3 men at Calyx whose families never got forgiveness, only folded flags and hollow explanations. Rowan's hand shook as Briggs extended his own. That perfect politician's handshake, ready to bind a bargain. Rowan reached dash, and then the car jolted. Tires screeched. A van swerved into the road, slamming to a stop sideways, blocking their path. Doors flew open. 3 masked men jumped out, rifles raised, faces hidden but movements sharp and trained. One shouted, "Out of the car, Pike! Now!" Briggs froze, fury twisting his features. Rowan's hand hovered between the photos and the outstretched handshake. 2 enemies, 2 choices, 2 futures, both laced with fire. The van's brakes screamed like Judgment Day, dust lifting off the river road. 3 masked men fanned out with rifles steady, their boots crunching gravel. Rowan Pike sat frozen, the photographs of his daughter still open on Briggs's lap. The senator swore under his breath. This wasn't supposed to happen. "Out of the car, Pike!" one of the masked men barked again. His voice was distorted, but urgent. "You're not safe with him." Rowan's pulse roared in his ears. Safe? He glanced at Briggs, still calm, still smiling, the politician's smile even with rifles aimed at the windshield. The man didn't flinch. He only leaned back, like this was all an inconvenience. Briggs whispered, "They're mercenaries, probably hired by Calic's competitors. They'll shoot you to make a point. Stay in the car." But Rowan saw the eyes behind the masks. Hard, yes, but not empty. They weren't here for a paycheck. They were here for him. Rowan's hand trembled on the door handle. His mind spun with choices. For 7 years, he'd survived by reading danger like a map. This felt different. This felt like the page had been turned for him. He opened the door. Rowan stepped into the sunlight, gravel crunching beneath his boots. A rifle swung toward his chest. The leader of the masked men lifted a gloved hand. Rowan Pike. "We've been waiting for you." Rowan's throat tightened. Waiting. For 7 years, all I've had were dogs at my heels. Now, you show up. The leader nodded once. "Because the time's right. Crowley's gone. Briggs is exposed, but the rot runs deeper. We need you alive to help pull it out." Behind Rowan, Briggs laughed. "Don't listen to this circus. They'll chew you up, then feed you to the wolves. Stay with me." And your daughter walks down that aisle smiling. At the sound of daughter, Rowan turned, fists clenching. He saw Briggs holding up the photos again, dangling them like bait. One of the masked men snapped, "Put that away, Senator." Rowan's heart pounded. He realized something then. Both sides wanted him, but not for himself. To Briggs, he was leveraged. To these masked men, he was a weapon. No one saw Rowan Pike, only what he could do for them. Suddenly, shots cracked in the distance. Sniper fire. Glass shattered as the car's back window exploded. Briggs ducked low, snarling, "It's a setup! Get down!" The masked men scattered, rifles searching the tree line. Rowan hit the dirt. The smell of gunpowder filled the air. In the chaos, Briggs grabbed Rowan's arm. His nails dug in, his voice urgent. "You walk with them. You're dead by sundown. But with me, you'll live to see your daughter's vows. Choose now." Rowan yanked free. His survival instinct screamed at him, "Move, don't freeze." He bolted toward the tree line opposite the gunfire, lungs burning, knees weak but determined. "Pike," one of the masked men shouted. "This way." But Rowan didn't stop. He ran toward the riverbank, where the ground dipped steep and the water below churned dark. He heard boots behind him, both sides chasing now. Both sides yelled his name like ownership. He didn't look back. Rowan reached the edge. The river roared, swollen from last night's storm. One misstep, and it could swallow him whole. Briggs's voice thundered behind him, commanding, furious. "Don't you dare, Pike. You'll drown before you find justice." The masked leader shouted over him, "Jump, Rowan. It's the only way they can't control you." Rowan's chest heaved. He thought of June's wedding. He thought of his brother's face in the fire. He thought of every night he'd slept under borrowed roofs, promising himself he'd make the truth matter one day. Behind him, shouts, boots, chaos. In front of him, the river, wild and merciless. Rowan closed his eyes. "I've been hunted long enough." And he jumped. The cold hit like a hammer. Water clutched at his chest, his limbs. He fought to surface, gasping, but the current dragged him downstream, spinning him like driftwood. Voices screamed from the bank, Briggs's fury mixing with the masked men's desperation. The current pulled him under again. He clawed for air, lungs screaming, vision dimming. And then, hands, strong hands grabbed him, dragging him against the current, hauling him to the muddy shore miles downriver. Rowan coughed, retching water. He blinked through the blur. The figure kneeling beside him wasn't masked. It was a woman, late 30s, sharp eyes, jaw set with steel. "You don't know me," she said, gripping his collar, "but I've been following your case for years. My name's Dana Holt. Benny Holt was my father. He told you the truth before he died, didn't he?" Rowan's eyes widened. He remembered Benny, the foreman who'd whispered about Crowley and the broken alarms. He remembered the guilt of not saving him. Dana's grip tightened. "My father was murdered for what he knew. Crowley was just a piece. Briggs is the one who ordered it. And if you want justice, Rowan, you're going to need me." Rowan stared at her, his chest still heaving, the river roaring behind them. He realized the story wasn't over. It was only just beginning. But before he could answer, Dana looked over her shoulder, eyes narrowing. "They found us," she whispered. From the tree line, flashlights flickered. Dozens of them. Boots crunching. Voices closing in. The river hissed at their backs like a live wire. Rowan Pike stood shoulder to shoulder with Dana Holt, the daughter of the foreman who had whispered the truth and died for it. Flashlights cut through the trees. Boots pounded closer. Both factions, the masked men and Briggs's hunters, were circling like wolves. Rowan's body ached from the jump, water still dripping from his hair, lungs burning. Dana's jaw was firm, eyes locked on the shadows. "They won't stop," she whispered. "Not until they own you. Or silence you." Rowan clenched his fists. "Then let's stop running." The first flashlight beam hit them. A rifle followed. "There!" a voice barked. Rowan raised his hands, but Dana pulled something from her coat. A phone, its screen glowing. She thumbed a button. A red light blinked. "They're live," she muttered. "Everything's recording. Live stream. Not just saved. Broadcast." Rowan's eyes widened. "Where?" Dana smirked. "Everywhere. Social feeds. News outlets. People want the truth. They'll have it raw." The hunters froze when they realized the camera was rolling. Masks, guns, the chase, all on display. And then Briggs stepped from the tree line himself, suit soaked with sweat, silver hair gleaming under flashlight beams. He didn't flinch. He even smiled. "Do you really think a camera saves you, Pike? This county eats truth and spits out headlines. You'll be forgotten by morning." Rowan shook his head. "Not this time. Not when the whole world's watching." Briggs raised a hand, and his men lowered rifles halfway, threats still thick in the air. "You want justice?" Briggs said smoothly. "Fine. But justice doesn't change power. I am from this county. I built it. One day, your grandkids will thank me for what I did." Dana stepped forward, fury sharpening her words. "My father thanked you too, until your orders killed him, until you burned men alive for profit." Rowan's voice was low but steady. "Crowley's gone. Now the world sees the man who gave him orders. You framed me to keep your hands clean, but this time, your fingerprints are all over it." For the first time, Briggs's smile cracked. Sirens wailed in the distance. Not Crowley's deputies, not Briggs's men, state police. Blue lights pierced through the dark, bouncing off trees. Someone had tipped them, maybe Klein from Internal Affairs, maybe the live stream itself. But the cavalry had come. Briggs's men panicked, some scattering into the woods, others frozen by the cameras and sirens. The masked faction lowered their weapons too, their leader stepping back. Briggs snarled, grabbing for Rowan's collar. "You think you win here? Truth doesn't matter when I control the judges, the contracts, the money." Rowan shoved him back hard, his voice cutting through like steel. "You controlled me for 7 years. You hunted me, called me a monster, made me a ghost. But the hunted doesn't stay a prey forever. Sometimes the hunted turns and brings the hounds down with him." Briggs stumbled just as state troopers flooded the clearing, rifles raised. He was forced to the dirt, cuffed, the weight of power ripped from his hands. Rowan stood tall, chest heaving, the red light of Dana's phone still blinking. By sunrise, the county's screens were flooded with the footage. Briggs's confession, his men with rifles, Rowan standing unarmed in the light. For once, the story couldn't be rewritten. At June's wedding 2 weeks later, Rowan wore a simple suit. His name cleared. His record was erased. His daughter was smiling brighter than the stained glass above her. When she took his arm to walk down the aisle, Rowan felt something he hadn't in years. Peace, real and steady. Dana stood in the back pew, watching. Their fight wasn't finished, not with the rot Briggs left behind. But for the first time, Rowan believed the tide could turn. As Rowan stepped out of the church into the sunlight, bells ringing and laughter spilling into the street, a black envelope lay on the hood of his car. No return address, no markings, just a single typed line inside. Calyx was only the beginning. Rowan closed his eyes. The hunt was over, but the war had only just shown its true face.